Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. My name is Tertius. I'll be your host for today. So today we'll be talking about making your building smarter with data analytics. So my guest for today is Mark Sanders. He's the Vice President for Sales in IMEA for Irisity. So thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thank you for the invite. Glad to be here.
Okay, so that's basically what I look like. If you've not seen me before, questions, feel free to use the chat or the questions tab. Alternatively, you can send me an email, but I would strongly encourage you to leave the questions for the end. Okay, so I would also like to take the opportunity to highlight the Access on-air webinars. And this is actually one of the webinars that we talk about. So if you go to our website, you will see all the pre-recorded or the previous webinars. You will also see some of the scheduled and upcoming webinars that we will be doing. So some of these webinars in the past we've done, we've spoken about, for instance, Access Site Designer. We've spoken about explosion protected devices. We've also spoken about thermal imaging, and of course other devices which could be audio devices, access control, etc. So I would definitely encourage you to have a look. There is some very, very good information to find there. Then also I would like to encourage you to go have a look at access.com learning, and there you will find a lot of valuable information. You will find information about, for instance, educational videos. You will find things like we're talking about today, webinars. You'll also see e-learning, and this allows you to do different courses and self-paced, so when it fits your time. There's also virtual academy trainings, and now we in Middle East and Africa, we have also moved back to actual classroom, instructor-led classroom trainings, and you'll find the schedules here that you can able to book these. So go have a look at these, and of course there is a lot of different content. I would also encourage you to go have a look at Access Certification Program, and this is basically an industry or a CCTV certification where, of course, we test you on access, but majority of the information that we test you on is industry related information. So for instance, do you understand how does a network work? Do you understand how to place a camera that light, for instance, does not affect the device's performance? So there's a lot of valuable information there. If you're considering to do the certification program, there is a preparation exam that you can do, and this will give you a very good indication of if you are ready to do this or not. So back to today's webinar. This is just a short agenda. So we'll start with Mark doing a short introduction on Irisity. Then we'll talk about designing new buildings to be smart buildings. But of course, we have a lot of existing buildings. So how do we take an existing building and we make it a smart building? And then at the end, we'll look at a short Q&A. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Mark. And Mark, feel free to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of insights about Irisity. Thank you.
My name is Mark Sanders. I came out to the Middle East 10 years ago and joined the Safe City project here in Abu Dhabi. Spent 6 years finding the best technologies, making sure the best technologies were in place and leverage those technologies to provide information to the various sectors of the Abu Dhabi government so that they can better their working practices and make the Abu Dhabi the safest city globally. I joined Irisity in November of 2021. Just trying to think if I got the date right. 2021, yes. and look to start introducing Irisity to the region. Irisity is new globally. Essentially, up until 2021, Irisity was a Swedish-based company providing advanced analytics to Sweden itself, healthcare, transportation, critical infrastructure. Irisity then came out into the market in 2021 with a broad reach across the globe. We have offices in the US, right across Europe, headquarters based in Sweden. Now we're having an office and registration in Abu Dhabi itself. It's been registered since October. Offices are opening very soon. Irisity is a company that feels they're smart at heart. We look at sustainable solutions. We cultivate a people culture within the business and make sure that we're getting or utilizing the staff in the very best possible way to provide analytics to the end users. We inspire and drive change within our industry, and we enables ethical use of advanced video analytics as well. We look at the integrity of the individual and make sure that the CCTV analytics solutions are balanced and on equality and freedom.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for the introduction. So if we head into smart buildings now, of course, in the beginning, I mentioned that we talk about new buildings, we talk about existing buildings, but there's actually a lot of similarities between these two environments. Now, from an access perspective, and this is just a screenshot from our website, we talk about scene intelligence. And this means that the camera is becoming extremely important with the image quality, with the data that it produces for the analytics to be as accurate as possible. Because at the end of the day, if your image is already not good to start with, then your analytics is only as good as the image that it receives. So I would again encourage you guys to go have a look at the website. Under solutions, there should be a section called Solutions by Technology. There is an area or a solutions by technology called Scene Intelligence. And again, we talk about using image usability, and again, what the device itself is capable of doing and producing to enhance and to help the analytics do their job as accurately as possible. So what I want to jump into now is some typical use cases where Irisity is really used and what these can do in smart buildings and not only in smart buildings. So I'm going to hand over to Mark again. Mark, give us some insights on what the platform and what the analytics typically can do around us nowadays.
Analytics themselves play a large part in making sure that our lives are easier, providing us with information, usable information, and automating a lot of the processes. For instance, we have the anomaly detection, which is the AI-based engine at the edge, which is actually looking at the scene, understanding that scene, and reporting back on anomalies, things that we don't usually see. We have anonymization in our scene, our system, whereby we're able to mask the individual's faces with regards to privacy. This is especially important in schools and colleges where parents of children do not want their children's images caught on video camera. We're also able to manage and make sure that the analytics perform equally as well behind that anonymization. Violent behavior, we detect aggressive behavior within the scene and make sure that real-time alerts get back to the authorities or someone to deal with that situation before it escalates into something that we don't want to happen. Smoke and fire detection, we concentrate really on smoke before fire. Essentially, when there's a fire, it's usually too late. Smoke is something that we try and detect before it reaches the actual smoke suppressant systems, because if we can detect smoke very early in the scene, we can actually stop the suppressant systems activating, which also costs a fair amount of money to reset and also replace all the equipment. So it's an added addition to make sure that you can minimize the amount of damage. Rail trespassing is something that we've introduced recently. This is something that's been running in Sweden for a long time through Irisity. It's essentially looking at a train coming into the station and allowing the individuals to board the train without any false alarms. When the train moves off, the analytics kick in and understand if any object has entered that space that's been defined. Traffic monitoring, we do advanced vehicle statistics, speed, direction, parking violations, these type of things. Slips and falls, this was developed for the healthcare industry, understanding where individuals, maybe elderly, are in homes, and when they slip and fall, someone's able to actually attend from a real-time alert that's being delivered. Crowd analysis, I think every analytics solution delivers crowd analysis. We have a high accuracy on understanding groupings and social distancing breaches. Forensic search, and this is something that's very interesting within Irisity. We analyze the entire scene, and we can identify all the objects and what's happening within that scene. This is all categorized, metadata tags added to it, and it's stored in a database. But it's actually happening in real time. It's not something that we have to invest lots of money in hardware to actually get that information to the end user, the person who's actually conducting the investigation. The results are delivered extremely fast compared to all other systems that I've seen. And the resources behind that are also kept to a minimum. AI filtering, making sure that we identify in the scenes exactly what's required and filter out all the rubbish, the garbage that you don't need to see or not interested in. Business intelligence, the platform itself under the hood, the open API allows an access to a lot of information, and that can be extracted and put into dashboards, into spreadsheets, so you better understand your environment. Perimeter protection, this is our strongest point. Perimeter protection for us is our bread and butter and allows us to deliver real-time alerts for intrusions, vandalisms, thefts, etc., etc. And then we have left objects and object protection. Left objects, obviously there's areas within the industry where you need to alert on left objects and make sure, A, they get back to their owners, or they're actually dealt with very quickly and the public isn't going to be at risk. Object protection, we can identify assets, and we're doing quite a lot of projects whereby we're looking at objects within a scene, making sure that everything is accounted for. And those objects are then utilized, sorry, that's not what I need to say. Left objects and object protection. We look at objects that have been left in a scene. These objects could be a threat to the public, or they need to get back to their owners as quickly as possible. So we're able to identify those, give an automatic alert, and someone's able to interact with those. Object protection, we're doing a lot of work with some industries whereby they're looking at objects they're using on a daily basis, and these may be in racks and they have their specific points. When those objects are taken from that rack, utilized within their working environment, the solution allows the company to identify that object is back in its specific place. Now, what that means is something isn't going out of the door with one of those items, maybe I don't know, a spanner or a hammer actually inside of it. And you can imagine in something like an aviation business where they're undoing engines with various tools, making sure those tools get back onto the rack and they're not left on their engines and flying out of the airport.
Okay, very interesting. So when we look at verticals, I saw a lot of different use cases and I already thought about a lot of things. So for today, we said we were going to talk a little bit about buildings. Of course, smart and safe cities is really around us. And you mentioned earlier Abu Dhabi as a safe city. So what I want to highlight today, and maybe give us a few examples of some of the analytics that you just spoke about, how in a city and even in a building, these what do people ask for? What type of analytics do customers ask for nowadays when you look at a city or a building? What do you see, Mark?
Across the board, it depends on the actual stakeholders and what they require out of that Smart Safe City project. The stakeholders could be police, it could be Ministry of Transport, it could be a whole host of end users that are really wanting access to data and have that data enriched. What we do is we look at the scenes and identify various things depending on what the client wants. If they're looking at transport, number of vehicles, types of vehicles, etc., etc. From the Safe City perspective, we also enable the opportunity to investigate whether maybe barriers could be removed, and these could be central barriers between roads. We did various projects where we understood the number of vehicles coming down a road and where people were crossing the actual intersections, jaywalking, for instance, and whether taking a barrier away would increase the jaywalking or decrease the jaywalking. And in fact, when you do something like take a barrier away, the jaywalking increases tenfold, which increases the risk of accidents, not just to the people crossing the road, but also the drivers of the vehicles. So these type of things are all taken into account. Also, the urban management of a safe city or a city per se, whereby analytics are used to understand people count, direction, vehicle movements, and better plan those cities to make sure that congestion is kept to a minimum, or there are things put in place specifically to divert vehicles and people. And this also moves through to things like events as well, event management. Say, for instance, in a city, you have a beachfront and maybe there's a massive party at the beachfront. Vehicles and people all flock to this location. You can actually use the Safe City project to manage those events and learn from those events at the same time. Manage the events, make sure people have information fed through to notice boards saying where parking is, for instance. Which subways to use, whether there's vehicles available so you can do park and ride outside of the city. And then from the perspective of future analysis as well, understanding what you could do better at these events and what things maybe need providing, or maybe identify the bottlenecks and make sure that those bottlenecks are dealt with.
Okay, so, sounds very interesting. So if we move now inside the buildings, and if I go, for instance, we in the Middle East, we have very large shopping centers as an example. What type of needs do you typically see in large indoor environments? And typically in the Middle East, when it's the summer months, we tend to spend a lot of time indoors. So what do you see? How does analytics sort of improve that summer months for us in the Middle East when we look at building optimization and all of these things?
With building optimization, the thing to do is to understand from each and every one of the stakeholders in the building what their requirements are. From the very top, where the CEOs are looking at numbers, they want to know that their building is being utilized in the very best way. Moving through to marketing, they obviously want to know who is in the building, VIPs, identify those and provide them with various opportunities. The retail units within the building, understanding the footfall. But not only that, we can stretch through to identifying the number of people in areas and then linking that to the HVAC systems to make sure that the utilization and energy efficiency of that building is improved. For instance, if you have an area on a day-to-day basis that is only has an occupancy of about 5 to 10 people, the HVAC system gets notification and you don't need to send as much cool air to that area. If the density increases, more people enter that area, then an automatic message goes back with the count of people, and the HVAC system can automatically increase and provide more cooler area to that region. And this all benefits the building and operations of that building, facilities management, to make sure that they're utilizing the building in the very best possible way, efficiently and effectively.
Okay, cool. Interesting. So we've spoken about buildings, and we all know when there's new buildings, infrastructure is not always a challenge because the system is designed to take in future technologies and future things in mind. Now, what have you seen when you work with existing buildings? How do you use a building that's 10, 20, 30 years old, and you bring these, you almost give it a new lease of life with enhancing and just the operations of this building? What do you find that there's some advice that you can give people when you look at existing buildings, what they should consider?
Absolutely. The first thing to consider is all the stakeholders. This is the part that's usually missed when identifying what smart solutions should be provided in the building. There are many, many smart solutions that you can implement, but not all of them are useful. And you need to go through all the different departments from, as I said, the CEO through to the facilities management, right the way down to the janitors and the people that keep that building clean. Then understand the zones. In a building, it might be, all buildings are different and they have different purposes. Understanding the purpose of that building is also important. Then working down in zones, understanding what those zones require. It may be the parking lot outside, moving through to the lobby and into individual floors and working your way through that, understanding how that floor is utilized, and then providing smart solutions to improve the working day. Buildings should be made to be environments that we're happy and comfortable to be in. Technologies can provide and automate a lot of the things that we do naturally. If you walk into a building, you need to have yourself a comfortable feeling interacting with that building and that building interacting with you. There's loads and loads of things to think about. With a building that you're starting from scratch, yes, understand the purpose of that building and engage with all of the stakeholders, right down to individuals just visiting. When you're enhancing a building that currently has some solutions, it's already been purposed, then it's a case of looking at where gaps are, what things you can what things can be identified to provide smart solutions to. Then investigate the technologies. And we're not talking about just the way that the video analytics are presented, or the cameras, or the solutions, the sensors that are put in place, but also about how those solutions are delivered. For instance, edge analytics through cameras provide a piece of equipment that is very, very cost effective. You're not having to find areas for servers that produce amounts of heat, expensive GPUs that are running in the background, wasting electricity in this way. The solution needs to be condensed into something that is suitable for that environment. Edge analytics, using the chipsets on the cameras or using edge devices to do the processing, far more cost effective. These systems and solutions also provide management and maintenance of themselves, even camera state monitoring, that can improve the way that the solution is utilized.
Okay. So the first thing that jumps to mind for me is when we look at the design, and I'm just going to jump a little bit on. So I work a lot with consultants, and we have a lot of consulting engineers in the industry, and we have a lot of partners that are system integrators and people designing systems. So how do you now use the tools that Irisity gives to people to actually understand what is the optimum placement of a device? From our side, we have tools that's Access Site Designer. We have a lot of enhancement and a lot of tools that help you to find the right product. But some of the challenges that I've personally seen is something like a camera placement has a huge impact on how the software works and how the results that you actually get at the end of the day. So tell us a little bit more about your design tools, Mark.
Sure. The Irisity planning application is available on the internet through the link, as you can see here on the screen. Now this enables you to drill down into the environment, use Google Maps, or you can upload your own floor plans. You can design or place all the areas within that location. Then you can place the cameras. Once you place the cameras, you actually get, Irisity is provided, cleverly provided, all of the analytics that we do and the optimum field of view, angles, etc., to make sure you get the most out of these cameras. We also, through the tool, provide all the bandwidth and storage requirements. And you get to adjust those scenes to better fit the way that you want to present this solution to the clients. Especially for the systems integrators, this is a great tool to interact with before you present your solution to the clients, so that they get a better feel of the fact that you understand their environment. And this is vitally important when providing video analytics solutions. It's not just to provide the solution, but really understand the environment and what the client wants out of this system.
Thank you. So I saw earlier that you were mentioning there was one specific use case where you were talking about hemispheric cameras, or basically fisheye cameras. Do you find that this is something that the people use quite a lot nowadays? I know many regulations and many, say, cities don't necessarily like using fisheye cameras, but I personally think there's a huge benefit of using these devices correctly, not necessarily for a security device, but from an analytics perspective, the data that one of these devices can provide to you could actually be extremely useful. What do you think?
All cameras are designed for specific purposes, and fisheye cameras are designed specifically to cover larger areas. For us, we utilize them for trips and falls. It's a really effective way of understanding the body pose position. They all have their values. Fisheye cameras, yeah, they cover larger areas. You can put a fisheye camera out. Not only that, they also have a better way of protecting themselves from malicious damage, etc., because they're covering the area completely under the camera.
Cool, thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish with one slide from Mark. And Mark, I just want to give you the opportunity here we always talk about what does analytics do? What is it in it for people? For me, probably the most challenging thing about analytics is understanding as a customer and as an end customer, what do you need to expect from a device? How do you manage the expectations? And how do you actually see, or how do you get an idea of what you're actually going to get at the end of the day? So I know you have a very, very cool slide here where you talk about 10 reasons to make cameras smarter with Irisity. So just some final thoughts from your side and some advice if you can give to people on analytics and AI. There's all these buzzwords in our industry. I think for me personally, we have a lot of education that we need to do on just managing expectations. People tend to look at television and movies and have almost a false expectation of what is happening in the security industry. So maybe just from your side, some advice. There's a very cool final slide that you can talk about.
Okay, well, analytics themselves are not meant to be difficult. They're meant to enhance our way of life. They're not really meant to even be seen. They're supposed to automate processes and make our life comfortable. We should be able to interact with locations, buildings, whatever, in a way that the analytics are there in the background and really don't affect us. What they're supposed to be doing is taking away the need to actually carry out meaningless tasks, provide information more than anything. When you start investing in analytics, you must be very, very confident that the solution is going to provide you exactly what you want. From the deployment right the way through to the end result. Again, it's clear to me that understanding the needs of the stakeholders right the way through where that camera is placed, from the top to the bottom. If we don't understand what that camera is being used for, the analytics supplied are just a waste of time, effort, and money.
Yep, I agree. So to finalize from my side, as what we ourselves has access to, I would encourage you to do a proof of concept. It's extremely difficult to understand from a photo or from a piece of paper or from a data sheet to understand what is going to happen in your environment. For me, honestly, if you have to select an advanced piece of software delivering you and helping you to get the jobs done in your environment, becomes very difficult if you've not seen what it does. So I would encourage you guys to ask questions. Feel free to test the software, test our devices, see what it does, do a proof of concept, that you get an idea of what type of information do you get from your environment. Sometimes we have one thing in our mind that we expect, but then when you start working on site and you start really understanding of how devices work in your environment, you might get a completely different outcome at the end of the day, which you were never expecting. So I would encourage you guys to take a few minutes, ask a few questions, reach out to myself, reach out to Mark, or we can put you in touch with Mark if you have any specific requirements or specific questions about analytics. I am going to add 2 handouts to the session. There is one handout from Irisity, which gives you a little bit of a summary of who they are and what they can do. And then there's a white paper from Access where we talk about AI in video analytics. We talk about some of our latest technologies and devices, something that Mark mentioned earlier, the edge devices themselves. So expect a lot more from Access in the future in regards to what these devices will be able to do and how they can help, and how we as Access and Irisity will be able to do a lot more with, for instance, the metadata that a camera will produce in the future. So I want to say thanks to Mark for joining me today. We will definitely do more of these sessions in the future. If you wanted to get back to me, if any of you guys are interested in a more focused, anything specific that you would like to understand more about analytics, again, this is a huge topic. We did 3 webinars last year, which was an hour and a half each, just on AI. So it's in a very comprehensive topic. It's impossible for us to talk about everything today, but just for me, again, thank you for attending. If I can just give you some advice, reach out to the experts. If you're unsure of what is realistic and what is not realistic, ask the questions. What you typically see on television and what you see in real life is not always the same thing. And always remember that the surveillance industry is probably one of the most challenging environments for AI and for surveillance, because our industry works 24/7. Our light changes, not one environment is the same, where if you look at television, everything is in a very controlled environment. So just bear that in mind. But again, feel free to reach out to myself or to Mark. We are there to answer any questions you might have. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed today's session. So thank you again, and feel free to answer or to submit your questions now. And if you want to, send me an email and we can get back to you if you have anything else.